During a 2011 visit to the United Arab Emirates, Marine Corps General James Mattis, the head of U.S. Central Command, referred to the UAE as quote-unquote "Little Sparta." He bestowed this name upon them because of their military effectiveness. You might be wondering how a tiny autocratic petrostate in the Persian Gulf developed a martial reputation. The military of the United Arab Emirates has emerged as the most capable in the Arab world, frequently punching above its weight class. Indeed, the Emirati Armed Forces' best units are on par with their counterparts in Western militaries. In this video, we're going to look at the evolution of the UAE's military and why the Emiratis have invested so heavily in their armed forces. Let's talk a little bit about the history of the UAE. While the history of the modern UAE only dates back to the early 1970s, the foundations for the UAE's later formation were laid by the British. In the 19th century, the British dominated the Persian Gulf region. This domination took the form of treaties or truces signed between Britain and the kingdoms of the region. As part of these truces, the British would provide military protection to these sheikdoms as well as diplomatic representation in return for exclusive British hegemony over the Gulf. The Emirates which make up the present-day UAE were thus called the Trucial States. These were not cases of traditional settler colonialism, however. In fact, the Gulf Arab states even tried to persuade the British to maintain their bases in the region, as London was scaling down its presence in the Middle East during the 1960s and 70s. The origins of the UAE's military date back to 1951, when the British formed the Trucial Oman Levies, later renamed the Trucial Oman Scouts in 1956. This force was tasked with protecting the Trucial State's oil infrastructure. When the UAE formed in 1971, they were again renamed as the Union Defense Force. Intra-UAE fighting influenced the structure of the Emirati military. The first military force funded by the Emirates themselves was the Abu Dhabi Defense Force, established in 1965. Over the following decade, the ADDF would balloon in size to more than 10,000 personnel, much larger than the UDF. In 1978, the ADDF was absorbed into the UDF. In 1996, Dubai agreed to a constitutional provision which unified the armed forces of all the Emirates under the control of the monarchy. This was, in many respects, the true unification of the UAE's armed forces. The UAE contributed troops to the Arab deterrent force that operated in Lebanon in the late 1970s during that country's civil war. Following Iraq's invasion of Kuwait in 1990, the GCC's joint military force, the Peninsula Shield Force, deployed in support of Kuwait. Emirati troops took part in this engagement as well. In 1993, Emirati soldiers took part in the UN's peacekeeping efforts in Somalia. More recently, Emirati troops have taken part in the conflicts in Afghanistan, Yemen, and Libya. As a matter of fact, the UAE was the first Arab country to join the war against the Taliban in 2003. According to an article by the American Enterprise Institute, taken as a whole, the UAE's military is unquestionably the most capable among the Arab states, probably by a considerable margin. The best Emirati units are the best in the Arab world, and the overall average appears superior to that of other Arab armies. The article goes on to say, "Indeed, the best and most experienced Emirati soldiers, officers, and units are excellent by regional standards and appear equivalent or possibly even more capable than those of some NATO members." The figurative tip of the Emirati spear, the Presidential Guard, are well-trained professionals, having been trained by the U.S. Marine Corps and commanded by Australian officers. In Yemen and Afghanistan, the PG performed effectively and the unit gained crucial combat experience. The UAE's Joint Aviation Command, in charge of most of the country's helicopters, was commanded by an American officer at one point. Joint Aviation Command is armed with state-of-the-art American platforms and has evinced great proficiency. Emirati Air Force personnel are generally highly competent and well-trained. The author of the aforementioned AEI article stated, "Emirati forces have demonstrated some remarkable logistical capabilities, particularly the UAE Air Force. Their combat-proven lift and aerial refueling capabilities exceed that of most countries." The article continues with, "Abu Dhabi deployed and sustained a brigade-sized force in combat in Yemen for roughly 5 years and supported armored advances of up to 100 kilometers in that war. The Emiratis have mounted long-range strike missions against targets in Libya employing their own refueling assets. While expatriate contractors still comprise part of the UAE's military, more and more roles are being staffed by Emiratis themselves. The UAE has an expanding arms industry which has garnered press in recent years. In December 2014, the UAE established the Emirates Defense Industries Company, or EDIC. Abu Dhabi's goal has been to grow domestic defense production from 10% to 30% between 2015 and 2030. By November 2015, EDIC employed about 10,000 people. According to author Zoltan Barany, the Emiratis are driven to develop specific skills that would put their companies on the global market for niche commodities such as naval ships, advanced unmanned vehicles, etc. Since 2007, the Emiratis have been manufacturing the Emir armored personnel carrier in conjunction with Gaz, a Russian car brand. The Emir is produced at Tawazun Industrial Park in Abu Dhabi. The Emirati defense electronics industry has partnered with companies like Raytheon. Emirati defense contractors have exported products to Saudi Arabia and Russia too, among other countries. In 2019, Emirati Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed, or MBZ, announced the creation of a state-run defense conglomerate called EDGE. Within a year of its formation, EDGE was ranked as one of the world's top 25 military suppliers. At the time of its formation, EDGE had 12,000 employees. The UAE's defense industrial complex has partnered with international firms such as Italy's Piaggio Aerospace and Russian helicopter subsidiary VR Technology. By the mid-2010s, the Emirates became the 18th largest arms exporter in the world. Back in the 2010s, Abu Dhabi purchased its first locally made military plane, the Calidus B-250 light attack plane. Calidus's B-250 was manufactured in collaboration with the Brazilian company and is in service with the UAE's Air Force. The defense sectors of the Emirates and their larger neighbor Saudi Arabia have not only worked with prominent Western and Russian manufacturers, but capital-poor firms from Eastern Europe eager for money from the Gulf. The more established Turkish and Russian arms industries have been looking to expand their influence in the Gulf and capitalize on opportunities where they may arise. Egypt, Jordan, and Yemen were the top recipients of Emirati arms exports and security assistance. In fact, the war in Yemen has served as a testing ground for Emirati-made equipment like munitions and APCs. However, most of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi's weapons still come from American suppliers. Author Zoltan Barany wrote in reference to the UAE, "Steady leadership, targeted spending, and a firm notion about the country's desired future role and capabilities set it apart from Saudi Arabia's emerging defense industry." While it is true that portions of the Emirati armed forces are comparable in effectiveness to their Western peers, the UAE's military machine is still lacking in many key areas. If you'd like to watch my video explaining the weaknesses of Arab armies more broadly, you can do so here. The Emirati military is still plagued by institutional shortcomings evinced by most Arab armies. One such shortcoming is rampant nepotism within the military. Leadership positions in the military are awarded based on personal ties and tribal allegiances, hampering Emirati combat capabilities. Yes, the issue of nepotism is less severe in the UAE's armed forces, but wasta and political reliability still count more than combat experience. The Emirati armed forces, like other military forces in the Arab world, is structured with coup-proofing in mind. One example of coup-proofing in action is the creation of redundant military and paramilitary formations, making it difficult for any one group to seize power in the event of a coup. Like the other GCC states, the Emirati army would be more accurately described as the army of the ruling Al Nahyan dynasty. Indeed, Mohammed bin Zayed, the country's leading monarch, has made upgrading the military's capabilities a priority. The ruling family has attempted to extol the virtues of military service to the citizenry, even going as far as instituting a draft. Still, Emirati's societal attitudes toward military service are still not as positive as in the United States or Israel, for instance. Another weakness within the Emirati military is poor training standards. A British naval officer remarked in an interview with Zoltan Barany, "Training is still sorely lacking below the elite units where there are still plenty of obese majors and lackadaisical time servers." The difference in preparation, mentality, and effectiveness between a comparatively small unit like the PG and the run-of-the-mill regular components of Gulf militaries is enormous. The UAE's Presidential Guard has borne the brunt of Emirati military involvement in Yemen. The PG, also dubbed the UAE's Foreign Legion, is made up of foreign fighters, many of whom are Yemenis. It must be emphasized that the gulf between the PG and regular Emirati ground units is much wider than that between U.S. Army Green Berets and regular U.S. Army units, for example. The United Arab Emirates' reputation as a little Sparta certainly has merit behind it. In relation to other militaries in the Gulf and the broader Arab world, the Emiratis have emerged as the most capable. Although the Al Nahyan dynasty has invested heavily in improving the UAE's military capacity, it is still victim to the same shortfalls that hamper the abilities of other Arab forces. What do you guys think? Are there any other little Spartas elsewhere in the world? How will the UAE's place in the region's security architecture evolve over time? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.